You know, there's this take on Batman. I feel like everyone has heard it at a party or like seen it on a Reddit thread at least once.
Oh, yeah.
And it's always delivered with this very knowing nod, like the person's just cracked the Da Vinci Code. They lean in and they go, you know, Bruce Wayne is actually the mask Batman. Batman's the real person.
Absolutely. It's the pop culture gospel at this point. It's sort of the default setting for how people see the character.
Right. And honestly, I've always kind of bought into it. It feels sophisticated. You know, it flips the superhero trope on its head. Superman is Clark Kent pretending to be human, but Batman, he's this monster pretending to be a gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
The billionaire playboy is just a performance, and the gritty, obsessive vigilante is the true self.
Mhm.
It makes him seem so focused.
It definitely makes him seem cool. But this is where we need to hit the brakes.
Yeah.
Because according to the deep dive we're doing today, specifically looking at an article by Ryan Collison, that edgy take isn't just superficial. It's actually missing the entire tragedy of the character.
Okay, wait. Missing the point how? Because if you tell me Bruce Wayne, the guy who buys hotels just to swim in the fountain, is the real guy, I'm not buying it. That guy is clearly a fake.
Oh, he is fake. But the source argues that Batman is fake, too.
Wait, so both of them are fake?
In a way, yeah. The Force argues that framing this as masks or performances it's trivializing what is actually happening in this man's brain. If you look at Bruce Wayne through a clinical lens, you are not seeing a hero with a secret identity. You're seeing a textbook case of structural dissociation.
Structural dissociation.
It's not a strategy. It's not a disguise. It's a diagnosis.
That sounds significantly heavier than just putting on a costume.
It is. The core thesis here is that the split between Bruce and Batman isn't a choice he made. It's a permanent trauma response. We are looking at a man who literally broke as a child and never put himself back together.
So our mission for this deep dive is to analyze him not as a superhero, but as a survivor of, well, severe childhood trauma.
And how he's built his entire existence around that fractured psyche.
Okay, I'm with you, but I have to play devil's advocate for a second. Lots of heroes have trauma. Spider-Man's uncle died. Iron Man was held captive. They don't have structural dissociation. They just have a motivation. Why is Batman different?
That is the million-dollar question. And to answer it, we have to go back to the catalyst, Crime Alley. The pearls, the gunshots, we all know this scene.
Right.
But think about the specific reality of that moment. You have an 8-year-old boy watching the violent, bloody murder of his entire support system, his whole world, gone in seconds.
It's horrific, sure. But again, people survive horror.
Adults survive horror. They have context. They have coping mechanisms. An 8-year-old. The source explains that a child just lacks the psychological resources to process that level of grief and terror. The brain is just overwhelmed.
Like a circuit breaker in your house.
Exactly. Too much voltage comes through, the breaker trips to save the house from burning down.
Yeah.
His brain tripped a breaker.
So what does that look like in the mind?
To survive, the psyche splits. One part of the mind walls off the trauma so the child can keep functioning. You know, eat, go to school, talk to Alfred. That's the apparently normal personality.
Okay.
But a separate part develops to hold the unbearable experience, the terror, the rage, the helplessness. That's the emotional personality.
And in a normal scenario, or I guess a scenario where the kid gets intense therapy, what happens?
In normal development, those parts would eventually integrate. You grow up, you process the grief, and you become one whole person who has bad memories. But for Bruce, that integration never happened.
He didn't heal the break.
He reinforced it. He didn't fix the circuit breaker. He rewired the whole house around the outage. The source describes these walls as calcifying into permanent architecture, two distinct alters or self-states.
And these aren't just moods.
No, not at all. They are distinct states of being with different memories, different emotions, and different functions.
All right, so let's map this out. We have the day side and the night side.
Right. Let's start with Bruce Wayne, the day side, the socialite, the charmer.
The guy you see at the galas. Now, I called him fake earlier, and you said I was right, but not in the way I think.
Exactly. His function is to handle daylight society. He is light because he literally does not carry the weight of the trauma. That altar holds the softness.
So when he's acting all frivolous and vapid, it's not just an act to fool people. It's because that part of his brain is actually truly disconnected from the darkness.
Precisely. That altar can't touch the darkness or he would collapse. He has to be light. Then you have the night side Batman.
The grim, focused one.
Right, obsessed with threat assessment. His function is to handle the violence. He's hard because he's armored away all the vulnerability. Bruce holds the soft so Batman can be hard. Batman holds the dark so Bruce can be light.
It's like a factory where the day shift and the night shift work in the same building, but they never actually speak to each other.
That's a very accurate way to put it.
But this brings me back to my first question. If Bruce is just the daylight container and Batman is the trauma container, then who's the guy? Who is the I in the sentence, I am Batman?
That is the most haunting part of this whole analysis. The source says the answer is neither.
Neither.
Both Bruce the socialite and Batman the vigilante are fragments, they're constructs. The real person is actually the frozen 8-year-old child running both of them from the shadows.
Wow. Okay, that definitely takes the cool factor down a notch.
It really does.
Yeah.
That child hasn't aged. He hasn't processed anything. He's just sitting there terrified and grieving, manipulating these two giant puppets to survive the world.
So when we talk about Batman's genius, all the prep time, the tactics, it's not the wisdom of a master strategist.
No. It's the desperate, hypervigilant survival mechanism of a scared kid who feels like if he loses control for 1 second, his parents will die all over again.
That paints the whole switching thing in a new light. Usually it's this deliberate choice. He looks at the bat suit and suits up. Does he? Does he actually control the switch?
The source suggests it's much more reactive. It's triggered by context. It literally maps onto night and day, darkness, threat, violence. They summon the Batman altar.
So that environment gives the rage-filled part permission to come out.
And safety, daylight. The summons Bruce.
But there's a problem there, right? Because Batman seems to be in charge most of the time.
You notice that. There's a massive imbalance of power. The Batman altar is practiced. It's reinforced every single night. It's dominant.
And the Bruce altar.
It's described as vestigial. It's starved and weak because it's so rarely used.
It's like a muscle that's atrophied. He never skips leg day, but he never does heart day.
And because the Batman altar is so dominant, it distorts reality. The source points out that Batman maintains all these irrational beliefs. Beliefs that Bruce, if he could access that part of the brain, would know are false.
Like what?
Batman believes the mission will end, or Gotham needs me to do this, or, and this is the big one, my methods are working.
I was going to say he's supposed to be the world's greatest detective. You'd think he'd look at the crime stats in Gotham after 20 years and say, hey, maybe punching clowns isn't lowering the murder rate.
Exactly. A rational adult would see that the rogues gallery is just getting bigger and more violent. But the Batman altar cannot admit that.
Why not?
Because the mission isn't really about crime. The mission is about internal management. He needs the crusade to keep the trauma contained. Bruce the socialite might see the truth, but that part of the brain is completely walled off from the decision-making center.
This disconnect, this explains so much about his personal life, or his lack of one. The running joke is that Batman can't keep a girlfriend.
Right.
It's usually framed as this noble sacrifice. The job is too dangerous. I can't put you at risk. But you're saying it's not noble at all.
It's not noble. It's structural. Think about what intimacy actually requires. It requires a whole person meeting another whole person. You have to be present. You have to let yourself be known.
And Bruce Wayne can't do that.
He literally cannot because he is never one person in the room at any given time.
That makes so much sense. If you're dating Bruce, you're dating a guy who's, mentally checking out? Or just fearing that the night shift is about to clock in?
It's even worse than checking out. The source brings up his relationship with Selina Kyle, with Catwoman. She's probably the closest he's ever gotten. But think about that dynamic. If she connects with Bruce, she gets the daylight self. That guy is charming, sure, but he lacks depth. He's disconnected from the very trauma that defines him.
She gets the shell.
Exactly. But if she connects with Batman, she gets the intensity, the shared trauma. But she also gets the armor. She gets a wall. She can never get the tenderness and the truth at the same time.
That reminds me of the Tom King comic run, the big wedding event.
Oh, yeah.
It was hyped for months. DC was like, save the date. And then it was a complete disaster.
It's the perfect case study. Bruce genuinely wanted to marry her. He wanted to be happy.
Right.
But a marriage requires an integrated commitment. You can't just marry an altar.
Right.
And ultimately, Batman, the dominant protective altar, could not risk the vulnerability. He viewed happiness as a threat to the mission.
So the whole relationship just fell into the gap between the two personalities.
The gap between selves, as the source puts it. She can't meet all of him because all of him doesn't exist in one place at one time.
That is just devastating. But okay, so if he can't make it work with a romantic partner, what about his family? The Robins, the Bat family. Fans usually point to this as proof that he's healing, he's building a support network, He's a dad.
Yeah, this is where the source gets really critical. And honestly, this is probably the darkest part of the analysis.
Yeah.
We tend to see the Robins as a sign of Batman's humanity, but the source views it as repetition compulsion.
Repetition compulsion. Define that for us.
It's a psychological concept where a person repeats a traumatic event or its circumstances over and over, trying to master it.
And Bruce, he just keeps collecting traumatized orphans who look just like him.
Yes. Dick Grayson, parents murdered. Jason Todd, street kid, parents gone. Tim Drake, eventually his parents are gone. He is finding kids who are in the exact same spot he was at 8 years old.
And here's the kicker, right? Instead of doing what a healthy adult would do, get them therapy, give them a safe home, help them process their grief so they don't end up broken, what does he do?
He puts them in a costume and throws them at the Joker.
He weaponizes them.
He trains them to be just like him. The source argues he isn't healing them. He's reproducing his own dissociation in them. He's validating his own sickness by spreading it to children.
Spreading the sickness? That's really harsh. I mean, Nightwing turned out okay, didn't he? He's the happy one.
He's functional, but he's still a vigilante living a split life. But look at the failures. Look at Jason Todd.
Oh, man, Jason.
Bruce took an angry, traumatized street kid, dressed him in bright colors, and sent him into the line of fire. When Jason died, that wasn't just a failure of the mission. That was Bruce's trauma getting a child killed.
And when he came back as Red Hood?
He came back as a murderer. He is an identity literally built around death and trauma. He's the living proof that Bruce's method doesn't heal. It creates monsters.
And then you have Damian Wayne, his actual biological son,
who was raised from birth to be a weapon. Bruce tries to reel him in, sure, but he still lets him be a child soldier. He teaches all of them that the only way to handle pain is to punch it.
When you lay it out like that, it sounds less like a family and more like a cult. He's cloning his trauma because if he actually helped them heal properly, then he would have to admit that he is broken. If he helps them become whole, normal, well-adjusted adults who don't dress up like birds, he has to admit his own existence is a pathology. So he just drafts them into his war.
I want to zoom out a bit to the meta level, because Batman's been written by hundreds of people. Does this whole structural dissociation theory hold up across different writers? Or are we just cherry-picking?
It holds up surprisingly well, but the severity of the split definitely changes. The source highlights a few key contrasts. Think about Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns.
Oh, yeah. That's the big, beefy, brutal Batman. The tank. Exactly. In Miller's version, Batman has completely consumed Bruce. The socialite is just this thin, crumbling mask. He's practically talking to himself. The dissociation is total. The violence is the only thing left.
And that's often seen as the coolest version.
Because he's effective.
Ah.
But psychologically, he's the most broken. Compare that to, say, the Scott Snyder run. Snyder often had Bruce reaching for integration. He talks about family, he tries to connect.
But it never sticks. The narrative always snaps back.
Which brings us back to Tom King, where he explicitly tried to heal through love, and the narrative just said, nope.
Right.
And this brings up a really meta point the source mentioned, which is the narrative constraint. The comics can't let him heal.
Because if he heals, the book ends.
Exactly. That's the tragedy of the medium. If Bruce Wayne actually heals, if he integrates, he stops being Batman. A healed Bruce Wayne would realize that dressing up as a bat and beating up the mentally ill isn't a healthy way to process grief.
He'd use his billions for social programs and therapy.
So the character's trapped. He's locked in this permanent state of trauma because we, the audience, demand it.
We're the ones keeping the 8-year-old frozen. We keep buying tickets to the freak show.
We pay to watch him bleed, psychologically speaking.
So let's do a thought experiment. Let's imagine the comic book industry didn't exist. Bruce Wayne is a real guy who walks into a clinic. You diagnose him with structural dissociation. What's the cure? What does integration actually look like for him?
It would be devastating work. First, he would have to actually feel the original grief. And I mean really feel it, not convert it into rage, not hide it behind a cowl. He have to experience the raw terror and sorrow of that 8-year-old boy.
A feeling he's been defending against for 30 years.
It would be an emotional collapse. It might break him. But that's the only way out. He has to grieve.
Okay, what's second?
Secondly, he would have to retire the Batman alter.
Kill the bat.
Not kill it, but merge it. He would have to accept that violence is just a capability he has, not an identity. He'd have to accept the mission was never about saving Gotham. It was about saving himself from his own feelings.
He'd have to admit that the entire crusade was a lie.
Or at least a defense mechanism. He'd have to look in the mirror and say, Gotham doesn't need Batman, Bruce needed Batman to avoid being Bruce. And that's a crushing realization.
It means accepting that he lost his life not when his parents died, but in all the years he spent running from that pain.
Yes. And the source argues that stopping is impossible for him because the mission is the dissociation. The nightly violence is the split externalized.
As long as he's punching someone, he doesn't have to feel the hurt.
And if he stops, the silence comes back. And in the silence, he has to hear that child crying. So he just keeps jumping off rooftops.
This really changes how I look at the character. We see Batman as this pinnacle of human achievement. Peak physical condition, peak intellect, unbreakable will. I mean, the guy stands next to gods like Superman and holds his own. But what you're saying is that all of that competence is built on a foundation of, well, a foundation of a frozen, broken child.
That's the hero reevaluated. His genius is real, but it's the genius of survival. The desperate creativity of a mind trying not to shatter completely. It makes him a tragic figure, not an aspirational one. He's running a marathon because he's terrified of what's chasing him.
And what's chasing him is just himself.
Precisely.
So as we wrap this up, what's the big takeaway for you when you close the book on this analysis? What really sticks?
For me, it's the final thought from the source on the nature of tragedy. We always say the tragedy of Batman is that his parents died.
Right. It's the origin story.
But the source argues that isn't the tragedy. Lots of kids lose parents. Lots of people suffer horrible trauma and grow up to be whole, integrated, happy adults. Grief is universal. Healing is possible.
So the tragedy isn't the bullet.
No. The true tragedy of Batman is that the protective split became permanent. The tragedy is that every single night he goes out as Batman, to save people, is just another night he spends not healing. He's sacrificing his own wholeness night after night to keep the trauma alive.
He's choosing the mask over the man over and over again.
Yeah.
That is, honestly, that's heartbreaking. It really makes you think about the cost of that cool factor we all love so much. It turns the bat signal from a symbol of hope into, I don't know, a symbol of a never-ending breakdown.
It's like a flare going up from a sinking ship, but the ship never actually sinks. It just keeps burning.
That's a haunting image. And it's accurate. A cry for help that no one answers because everyone's too busy cheering for the hero to save the day. Well, I don't think I'm going to be able to look at a Batman comic the same way again. I'm just going to see that kid in the alley.
It's hard to unsee the child once you know where to look.
Thank you so much for breaking this down. This was heavy, but really fascinating.
My pleasure.
And thanks to everyone listening to this deep dive. Take care of your own brains out there. Don't let the walls get too thick.
And remember, integration is always the goal. Stay whole.
See you next time.